That summer, forever etched in my memory, was when everything took an unexpected turn. It was meant to be a straightforward escape, an opportunity to breathe in the fresh, crisp country air at my grandparents' farm, where the skies stretched endlessly above us. My friends and I meticulously planned this trip as a much-needed respite from the relentless pace of city life, an opportunity to unplug and immerse ourselves in the simplicity and calm of rural surroundings. We envisioned days filled with laughter and relaxation, completely unaware that the farm was a keeper of secrets, dark, unsettling secrets that would continue to haunt us long after we departed. The initial days unfolded like a dream, a serene and picturesque escape from reality. We roamed the expansive fields, swam in the refreshing river, and savored the sumptuous meals my grandmother lovingly prepared, each dish a testament to her culinary skills. The farm was the epitome of tranquility, its vast stretches of wheat swaying gently in the breeze, accompanied by the distant lowing of cows in the fields. Yet, as the sun descended below the horizon, casting elongated shadows over the landscape, an inexplicable sense of unease began to creep into our consciousness, a feeling we couldn't quite shake off. It all began with the sounds, subtle at first. Initially, we dismissed them as the natural creaks and groans of an old farmhouse settling into the night, mere background noise to our idyllic retreat. However, the noises soon took on a more distinct character, whispers that seemed to float through the very walls, soft footsteps echoing in the corridors, and the distant cry of something that wasn't quite animal. Jake, my friend with an insatiable curiosity, was the first to bring it up, his voice tinged with both intrigue and unease. "Do you guys hear that at night?" he inquired, his eyes scanning our faces in search of reassurance, hoping he wasn't the only one experiencing this eerie phenomenon. We laughed it off, attributing it to the whims of the wind or the playful imaginations of city kids unaccustomed to the sounds of the countryside. Yet, as the nights dragged on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were desperately trying to convey a message that eluded our comprehension, a message hidden within the very fabric of the farm itself. One evening, as the sun set in a breathtaking blaze of orange and pink, painting the sky with vibrant hues, we made the decision to explore the old barn situated at the edge of the property. It had stood abandoned for years, its wooden beams weathered and sagging under the relentless weight of time, a monument to a bygone era. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, we ventured inside, our footsteps reverberating in the cavernous space, each step echoing through the silence. The air was thick with dust, swirling in the beams of our flashlights as they danced across the walls, revealing faded photographs and rusted tools, remnants of a past life. It was then that we saw it, a shadow flitting across the far wall, too quick and too deliberate to be dismissed as a mere trick of the light. We froze, our hearts pounding in unison, a shared moment of fear and awe. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, a tremor betraying her calm exterior. We nodded, our earlier bravado replaced by a growing sense of dread, an acknowledgement of the unknown. As we turned to leave, a chill swept through the barn, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent, as if the very walls were speaking to us, urging us to uncover the truth hidden within their depths, a truth that demanded to be heard. That night, sleep eluded us. We huddled together in the living room, the flickering light of the fireplace casting eerie shadows on the walls, shadows that seemed to dance to the rhythm of our unease. My grandfather, sensing our disquiet, shared stories of the farm's history, tales of settlers and hardships, of lives lost and dreams shattered, stories that painted a picture of resilience and tragedy. But there was one story he hesitated to tell, his eyes clouded with memories too painful to revisit, a story that lingered on the tip of his tongue. As the days passed, the occurrences became more frequent, more pronounced. Objects would move on their own, disappearing and reappearing in the most unexpected places, as if guided by unseen hands. The whispers grew louder, forming words that were almost intelligible, words that seemed to hover just out of reach. And then there were the sightings, glimpses of figures in the fields, watching us with eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness, eyes that held untold stories. Sarah was the first to suggest that the farm might be haunted, her voice a mixture of skepticism and belief. We laughed at the notion, but deep down, we all felt it, the presence of something beyond our understanding, something that defied logic and reason, something that demanded answers. Desperate for answers, we decided to investigate further, delving into the farm's past and the lives of those who had called it home, determined to uncover the truth. Our search led us to the local library, where we pored over old newspapers and records, piecing together a history that was both fascinating and terrifying, a history that spoke of love and loss, of joy and sorrow. The farm, it seemed, had been the site of a series of tragic events, a fire that had claimed the lives of an entire family, mysterious disappearances, and tales of a curse that had plagued the land for generations, a curse that still lingered in the whispers of the fields. Armed with this knowledge, we returned to the farm, determined to confront whatever force was at play, determined to bring peace to the restless spirits. That night, as the wind howled outside and the whispers reached a fever pitch, we gathered in the barn once more, our hearts united in purpose. We lit candles and formed a circle, our hands clasped tightly as we called out to the spirits that lingered in the shadows, spirits that had become a part of our lives. The temperature dropped suddenly, our breath visible in the frigid air, a testament to the presence of the supernatural. And then, we saw them, figures emerging from the darkness, their faces etched with sorrow and longing, faces that spoke of a past filled with heartache. They moved towards us, their whispers forming a chorus of voices that filled the barn with a haunting melody, a melody that resonated with the pain of the past. In that moment, I understood. They were not here to harm us, but to seek our help, to find closure for the tragedies that had bound them to this place, their souls trapped in a cycle of grief and despair. We listened as they shared their stories, their pain and suffering laid bare before us, stories that demanded to be heard and remembered. With each word, the weight on my chest lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose, a purpose that transcended the boundaries of life and death. We vowed to honor their memory, to share their stories and ensure that they would not be forgotten, to give them the peace they so desperately sought. As the first light of dawn broke through the barn's windows, the figures began to fade, their whispers growing softer until they were no more, their presence a gentle reminder of the past. The farm, once shrouded in mystery and fear, was now a place of peace and healing, a testament to the power of understanding and compassion. The whispers had ceased, and the shadows that had haunted us were gone, leaving behind a sense of tranquility. We left that summer with a newfound respect for the past and the understanding that some stories are meant to be told, no matter how haunting they may be, stories that bridge the gap between the living and the dead. To this day, I carry the memories of that summer with me, a reminder that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we might think, and that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in the whispers of the fields, waiting for someone to listen, waiting for someone to understand. And as I reflect on those days, I realize that the past is not just a memory, but a part of us, a part of the present that shapes our future, a legacy that we must honor and cherish. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. Reflecting on the past, it's challenging to identify the precise moment when everything began to fall apart. Our lives in the modest suburban home where we grew up seemed straightforward and predictable, a serene existence that offered comfort in its routine. The days flowed seamlessly into one another, marked by the gentle rhythms of suburban life. Yet, this tranquility was shattered when my brother Sidney reached the tender age of 4. It was as if an ominous shadow descended upon our family, whispering dark secrets in the quiet corners of our lives, secrets that seemed to grow louder with each passing day. The once comforting walls of our home seemed to close in, harboring an unseen menace that we could not name or understand. Initially, the changes were subtle, almost innocuous, barely noticeable to anyone not living within our walls. Sidney, a bright and imaginative child, was often swept away by vivid dreams that left him restless and uneasy. He would wake in the middle of the night, eyes wide with fear, searching the darkness for something only he could see. Our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, noticing his nighttime distress, kindly gifted him a plush rabbit toy, whimsically named Mr. Jingles. At first, Mr. Jingles appeared to be a blessing. Sidney clung to the toy as though it were a lifeline, the nightmares that once plagued his nights dissolving under the toy's watchful presence. We all welcomed this transformation, relieved by the newfound peace that settled over our nightly routine. The quiet that descended upon our household was a balm, soothing frayed nerves and allowing us to breathe a little easier. However, as time passed, Sidney's attachment to Mr. Jingles grew increasingly unsettling. He began to engage in endless conversations with the toy, as if they were sharing deep, secretive dialogues. His laughter, once innocent and light, took on a sinister tone, echoing eerily through the halls at odd hours. The sound would often jolt me awake, sending shivers down my spine as I lay in bed, paralyzed by a fear I couldn't quite understand. While my parents dismissed this behavior as a mere phase, I couldn't shake the chill that crept over me each time I passed his room, the air seemingly heavy with an unseen presence. It was as though the very atmosphere had shifted, charged with an energy that was both foreign and frightening. As days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to punctuate our lives with alarming frequency. Objects inexplicably moved on their own, shadows flickered in places devoid of light, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled over our home. It was as if the house itself had become a living entity, breathing and watching us with an unseen gaze. Sidney's behavior became increasingly erratic, his once bright eyes now glazed over as if he were witnessing something beyond our comprehension. My parents, their concern mounting, whispered anxiously at night, their fear palpable in the dim glow of their bedside lamp. They clung to each other in the darkness, seeking comfort in shared fears that they dared not voice aloud. Desperate for answers, they sought the counsel of doctors and therapists, yet no one could provide an explanation for the darkness that clung to Sidney. It was during this time of desperation that Father Daniel, a retired priest known for his dealings with the supernatural, entered our lives. He was a stern man, his gaze piercing and intense, as though he could see into the very depths of your soul. He listened intently to our plight, nodding with a knowing expression, as if he had encountered such malevolence before. His presence brought a strange mix of hope and fear, the promise of salvation mingled with the dread of what he might uncover. Father Daniel performed a ritual, an exorcism, he called it, in the dim confines of Sidney's room. The air crackled with tension as he chanted, his voice rising above the oppressive silence that filled the space. I watched from the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest, as shadows twisted and writhed around my brother. With a final, resounding command, Father Daniel declared the evil banished, and for a fleeting moment, peace returned to our home. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight that had hung over us seemingly lifted, and we dared to hope that the nightmare was finally over. Sidney appeared to revert to his old self, his eyes once again sparkling with the innocence of childhood. My parents were relieved, eager to leave the ordeal behind and return to a semblance of normalcy. They embraced the return of routine, clinging to the familiar as a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The house felt different, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something unseen. The shadows seemed to linger just a little longer, the silence a bit too profound, as if the very walls were keeping secrets. As the years passed, Sydney grew into a seemingly normal teenager, yet the memory of those dark days lingered in my mind, refusing to be forgotten. I couldn't dismiss the way he sometimes looked at me, with an intensity that belied his youthful facade. There was a depth to his gaze that seemed to hold secrets I dared not ask about. I tried to convince myself it was paranoia, a lingering fear from a time I wished to forget, but the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edges of my consciousness. It was a shadow that followed me, whispering of things left unresolved, of darkness that had merely been pushed aside. Then, the incidents began anew, small at first, almost imperceptible. A misplaced object, a fleeting shadow, Sydney's laughter echoing eerily in the dead of night. The whispers returned, insidious and relentless, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I realized then that whatever Father Daniel had done, it hadn't been enough. The darkness still lingered, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to re-emerge. It was a relentless force, patient and cunning, weaving its way back into our lives with a silent determination. The final confrontation came on a stormy night, the wind howling like a beast outside our windows, rattling them in their frames. The storm seemed to mirror the chaos within our home, a tempest that could not be contained. I found Sydney in the basement, his eyes reflecting a malevolent gleam as he cradled Mr. Jingles. The air was thick with tension, the shadows dancing wildly around us, as if mocking our attempts to find peace. In that moment, I felt the weight of our family's unspoken fears, the realization that the evil had never truly left us. It was a moment of clarity, a recognition of the battle that lay before me. Driven by desperation and an overwhelming need to protect my family, I did the unthinkable. The act itself was a blur, a cacophony of chaos and terror, but when it was over, Sydney lay still, the shadows finally retreating into the depths. I stood there, breathless and trembling, convinced that I had saved us all from a fate worse than death. It was a moment of triumph tinged with tragedy, a victory that came at an unimaginable cost. The authorities called it a tragic accident, a young boy's life cut short by a brother's misguided attempt at heroism. They pieced together a narrative that fit their understanding, neatly packaging the horror into something digestible. But I knew the truth. I had not killed my brother. I had vanquished the demon that wore his skin. It was a distinction that mattered little to the world, but meant everything to me. Even now, as I pen these words from the confines of my cell, I feel no remorse. Only a lingering unease, a sense that the shadows are watching, waiting for another chance to whisper their dark promises. The walls around me offer no solace, the bars no protection from the memories that haunt me. I can only hope that my actions have truly set us free, that the echoes of that malevolent force have been silenced for good. But in the quiet moments, when the world is still, I hear them, faint, distant whispers, reminding me that some shadows never truly fade. They linger, waiting patiently, biding their time until they can once again spread their darkness, a chilling reminder that the battle against such malevolence is never truly over. It is a burden I carry alone, a truth that isolates me from the world beyond these walls, yet one that I must bear for the sake of those I sought to protect. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. The evening air hung thick and heavy, one of those stifling August nights that seemed to press down with a weight that was almost tangible. It felt as though the very atmosphere was working against any attempt at comfort, conspiring to make each breath a laborious task. The humidity clung to my skin, a constant reminder of the oppressive heat that seemed to seep into every pore. For months, I had been tormented by relentless headaches, a persistent dull ache that seemed to mirror the tumult within my mind. They were like a constant drumbeat, a reminder of the chaos I couldn't quite escape. My mother, ever the concerned parent, had urged me to rest, to find relief in the cool, artificial breeze of our air-conditioned living room. She worried endlessly, her voice a constant presence urging caution and care. Yet, the walls of our home seemed to close in around me, suffocating in their proximity, and the mere thought of confinement was unbearable. The air inside felt stale, the space too small to contain my restless thoughts. I felt an overwhelming need to escape, to run, to feel the solid pavement beneath my feet, to break free from the prison of my own thoughts. As I tightened the laces on my running shoes, my mother's voice echoed in my mind, a gentle yet persistent plea for caution. Her words were filled with love and concern, a reminder of her constant vigilance. Despite her worries, the urge to flee, to find solace in motion, was overpowering. It was as if the act of running could somehow shake loose the tension that gripped me. I stepped out into the oppressive night, the heat enveloping me like a smothering blanket. The air was thick, almost tangible, wrapping around me as I moved. The streets lay silent, the usual hum and bustle of the neighborhood now reduced to a mere whisper, as if the world itself had paused. The quiet was eerie, a stark contrast to the noise that usually filled the night. I began my run at a measured pace, each rhythmic strike of my feet against the pavement offering a brief respite from the throbbing in my head. The repetitive motion was soothing, a temporary escape from the pain. The darkness of the night served as both a refuge and a shield, concealing me from the world and, in turn, hiding the world from me. The shadows were comforting, a cloak that allowed me to move unseen. As I ran, I concentrated on my breathing, the steady in and out that kept me anchored, kept me sane amidst the chaos. The rhythm was a lifeline, a thread of normalcy in the midst of turmoil. Then, cutting through the silence, I heard it, a sound that pierced the night like a sharp blade. A baby's cry, faint yet unmistakable, drifted through the trees lining the path. The sound was jarring, unexpected in the stillness. I halted, my heart thundering in my chest, the sound both unsettling and strangely compelling. It was an unusual place for a child, especially at such an hour, and the cry was imbued with a desperation that tugged at something deep within me. It was as if the cry reached into my very soul, stirring emotions I couldn't quite name. I found myself hesitating, torn between the instinct to assist and the fear of the unknown. The weight of my phone in my pocket felt significant, a connection to help that I was reluctant to utilize. The device was a lifeline, yet using it felt like crossing a threshold I wasn't ready to face. Yet, the cry came again, more insistent, and I found myself dialing the police, the words spilling out in a hurried jumble. My voice was shaky, the urgency clear in every syllable. They assured me that help was on the way, but as I ended the call, a chill crept down my spine. The sensation was unsettling, a prelude to something I couldn't yet understand. It was then that I heard another sound, a voice, soft and intimate, whispering my name. It seemed to emerge from the shadows, enveloping me like a fog. The voice was familiar, yet distant, as if it came from a place I had long forgotten. This voice spoke of things long buried, secrets I had struggled to forget. It knew of my headaches, of the guilt gnawing at my insides, of the darkness I had tried so desperately to escape. The words were like a mirror, reflecting truths I had hidden even from myself. Fear gripped my throat, yet curiosity, that persistent companion, urged me onward. I needed to know, to understand what was unfolding. The voice vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, leaving me alone with the oppressive silence of the night. The absence was profound, a void that echoed with unspoken questions. The remainder of my run was a haze, my mind awash with thoughts and fears. The path blurred beneath my feet, each step a struggle against the tide of emotions. When I finally stumbled back home, the house seemed altered, as if the shadows had shifted in my absence. The familiar space felt foreign, as if it held secrets of its own. My mother lay asleep, her gentle snores a soothing reminder of the normalcy I yearned for. Her presence was a balm, a touchstone in a world that felt increasingly uncertain. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind replaying the night's events in an endless loop. Each moment replayed with vivid clarity, a tapestry of images and sounds that refused to fade. When morning finally dawned, I was filled with a restless determination. The light brought no answers, only a resolve to seek them out. I knew I had to return to that place, to face whatever lingered in the shadows of my mind. The pull was irresistible, a call to confront the unknown. The daylight offered scant comfort as I retraced my steps along the path. The sun was bright, yet the clarity it offered was deceptive. The trees stood silent, the air heavy with the promise of revelations. The stillness was palpable, a prelude to discovery. I moved slowly, each step a reminder of the fear that had gripped me the previous night. The path was familiar yet strange, each twist and turn a reflection of the journey within. It was then that I discovered it, a small clearing hidden among the trees, a place seemingly untouched by time. The space was serene, a world unto itself. And there, in the center, was an old, weathered cradle, its wood worn and splintered. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, memories crashing over me with an intensity that left me breathless. The cradle was a symbol, a relic of the past that held the key to the present. The voice returned, a gentle murmur carried by the wind, urging me to remember. The words were soft, yet their impact was profound. As I stood there, the pieces of the puzzle began to align. The headaches, the guilt, the secrets I had buried deep, they were all connected to this place, to the choices I had made. The realization was both freeing and binding, a truth that offered both clarity and consequence. In that moment, I realized the darkness I had been fleeing was not an external force, but a part of myself, a shadow I had cast through my own actions. The revelation was stark, a mirror held up to my soul. The relief of understanding was tempered by the weight of the truth, a truth I could no longer ignore. The knowledge was a burden, yet it was also a path to healing. As I left the clearing, the headaches that had plagued me for so long began to dissipate, but the fear remained, a constant reminder of the past I could not alter. The journey had changed me, yet the echoes of what had been lingered. The August night had whispered its secrets, and I was irrevocably changed by what I had learned. The revelations lingered, a testament to the journey I had undertaken, both within and without. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to walk, armed with the truths I had uncovered. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. I always envisioned my retirement as a new beginning, a time filled with serenity and tranquility, a phase in life where I could finally enjoy the calm pleasures of our quaint little town, Brighton Cross. It was supposed to unfold as a gentle era of relaxation, where I could indulge in the slower rhythms of life set against a backdrop of familiar faces and comfortable places, echoing the warmth of community I had come to cherish over the years. My days were to be filled with peaceful walks through the cobblestone streets, leisurely afternoons in the company of decades-old friends, and evenings spent watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of peace and nostalgia. However, during the summer of 2023, a cruel twist in fate came forth, disrupting this serene vision and instead plunging me into a reality laced with horror, a waking nightmare that would etch itself indelibly into the landscape of my memory. It was on one such sweltering afternoon in July, when the air hung heavy with an oppressive heat that clung unyieldingly to every surface and seemed to squeeze one's very spirit, that I first perceived something was dreadfully, inexplicably amiss with Frank. Frank was a genial and friendly old gentleman known to everyone in Brighton Cross. Until his retirement, he had been the heart and soul of the Resting Hawk, the town's beloved pub. His affable nature and constant presence had been a comforting fixture in our daily lives, embodying the warmth of community spirit. Over the years, I had come to know him well, understanding deeply that Frank was one to wear his emotions openly on his sleeve, never one to mask what he felt, expressing his heart openly and without hesitation. Yet on this particular day, there was something profoundly foreign and troubling in his gaze, an unsettling void that reached into my own heart and chilled me to my core, far beyond what any heat from the summer sun could achieve. As the late afternoon sun enveloped the cobblestone streets of Brighton Cross in a luscious golden glow, producing ominously long shadows that seemed to gesture towards unseen dangers, Frank ambled into the town square. He did so without his characteristic friendly wave, a habitual greeting every resident had come to expect, and returned in kind with a smile. Instead, and to our great collective astonishment, he began to scream, his voice a jarring disruption to the peaceful scene. His words were a jumble of incoherence, caught in a wild web fraught with the tangles of paranoia and ominous fear. What began as mere incoherent shouts quickly erupted into an unbearably terrifying spectacle of self-inflicted harm, right there in full view of our disbelieving eyes. We could do nothing but stand frozen, horrified and helpless, as he was overtaken by a violent tempest of madness mere feet away, until finally, as if in resignation, he collapsed on the sun-baked pavement, his form hauntingly still and lifeless. Frank's untimely and tragic death marked merely the beginning of a series of disturbing events. It was not the isolated tragedy we had all desperately hoped it would remain. One resident after another in Brighton Cross succumbed to an inexplicable descent into madness, as though caught in the clutches of some relentless, invisible force that refused to relinquish its grip. The Wilsons, our elderly neighbors who had always exemplified a model of a loving partnership, found themselves torn apart by a frenzy so fierce it shocked everyone, their terror-filled screams slicing through the quiet nights, leaving an indelible horror in their wake. The cherished friendships and long-standing bonds that formed the backbone of Brighton Cross swiftly unraveled, disintegrating with alarming rapidity, even faster than Frank's mortal remains under the harsh July heat. As panic surged through the town like a viral contagion, I found myself barricaded within the usually comforting confines of my home. My windows transformed into portals through which I bore unsettling witness to a world spiraling uncontrollably into chaos. I saw familiar faces morphing into unrecognizable strangers, their eyes hollow and actions erratic. The radio, once a source of connection and community news, now crackled with ominous fragments of an inexplicable, distressing quarantine. The ground beneath our collective feet seemed to shift as it became clear we were trapped, ensnared in a nightmare with roads barricaded, and mysterious figures cloaked in foreboding anonymity stationed at the town's periphery. Their intentions were as obscured and clouded as their concealed faces, leaving us with no help, no escape, only the domineering presence of insanity lurking at our very doors. Under the weight of mounting desperation, those of us who clung to our clarity, those precious few remaining sane souls, formed tentative alliances out of sheer necessity and a drive for mutual survival. Among us was Sarah, the town librarian, whose previously gentle manner was now reinforced with a fierce determination. Ted, an ex-Marine once comfortable in his solitude but now an invaluable crux in our makeshift group, and Emily, a high school senior whose sharp intellect and insight belied her young age. providing guidance and understanding well beyond her years. Together, we crafted a nebulous plan of escape, an endeavor fraught with risk, akin to navigating a tightrope suspended over a daunting abyss shadowed by uncertainties. Each night was transformed into a solemn vigil as we took turns keeping watch, our eyes sharp and unwavering in anticipation of encountering the soulless figures lurking just beyond the shadows, figures that had once been cherished friends and beloved family. Sleep became a rare treasure, and when it did grace us with its temporary presence, it offered scant respite, plagued by nightmares that mirrored our waking fears and dread. By the light of day, we scoured the deserted remnants of our once thriving town for the necessities of survival, moving silently as phantoms through Brighton Cross, our presence as barely noticeable as shadows, averting our gaze from the painful, scattered reminders of human fragility that all too frequently littered our path. It did not take long for the realization to dawn upon us, like a slow creeping chill, that this collective descent into madness was anything but accidental. Beneath the surface of our town lay sinister secrets, long buried yet reeking with malevolence. Echoes of past experiments and hushed whispers of governmental machinations meddling with forces beyond our mortal comprehension surfaced with terrifying clarity, as if taunting the boundaries of our unraveling courage. One day, while sifting through the desolate husk of Frank's forsaken pub, I stumbled upon an old journal. Its pages were teeming with frantic entries, conspiracy theories mingled with accusations of betrayal that once seemed ludicrous, yet now resonated with a truth both disturbing and magnified by the grim reality that had chained us. As unyielding days bled seamlessly into weeks, our resolve solidified into an unbreakable determination. The more we uncovered about the insidious forces in motion, the clearer it became that we were puppets in an elaborate and perilous game stretching far beyond our initial understanding. This realization spurred us to formulate a plan to confront the source of the madness, a dangerous gambit as likely to be our undoing as it was to be our salvation. Each day ended with sunlight retreating hurriedly, as the setting sun cast an eerie, ethereal glow over the ravaged heart of Brighton Cross, illuminating our chosen path with unnerving clarity. What transpired thereafter, I commit to writing not only to exorcise the lingering specters of those memories, but also to serve as a grim warning for you. In our world, shadows indeed exist, sinister plots that warp and disfigure humanity into grotesque, unrecognizable forms. As we ventured into the epicenter of this darkness, an abandoned facility pulsating with malevolent energy, I came to comprehend the monumental magnitude of our struggle and the treacherous path we had embarked upon, layered as it was with unfathomable peril. I cannot speak with certainty of our ultimate fate or success. Nor can I promise that when this account reaches your eyes, I will still be gracing the land of the living, or if I too have succumbed to the chilling fate that claimed my neighbors. But remember this, echoes of madness are reverberating, and it is our solemn duty, those of us who can sense and hear them, to uncover and unmask this truth before it completely devours us all. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. As I sit here, attempting to capture the essence of my experiences in words, a peculiar blend of nostalgia and dread envelopes me, wrapping me in a cocoon of memories that seem to stretch across the vast expanse of time. It's as if I'm being transported back in time to the mysterious events that unfolded in the heart of the Whispering Woods, a place that has since been etched indelibly into my soul. This narrative is more than just a recounting of an unusual adventure. It stands as a testament to the indomitable human spirit, showcasing our remarkable resilience when confronted with the mysterious and inexplicable elements of the unknown. It is a story of courage and unity, of facing the unfathomable with a steadfast heart and a determined mind. Our tale began on a crisp, invigorating autumn afternoon, a day where the air was saturated with the rich, earthy aroma of fallen leaves that danced playfully in the gentle breeze. The sky was a brilliant canvas of azure, dotted with fluffy white clouds that seemed to float lazily across the horizon. It was on this fateful day that I decided to lead a group of local children on an adventurous walk through the enchanting forest that bordered the edges of our quaint town. The Whispering Woods, with its towering, ancient trees and dense, mysterious underbrush, had long been a source of bewilderment and fascination, a place where imagination could run wild and free. Legends wove tales of ancient secrets concealed within its depths, but such stories were often dismissed as mere folklore until that unsuspecting day arrived, changing our perceptions forever. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the forest, an unusual chill settled upon us, a coldness that seemed to seep into our very bones, and the woods seemed to communicate in a language neither our minds nor ears could comprehend. It was as if the forest itself was alive, whispering secrets that only it could understand. It was at this eerie juncture that young Tommy, with his eyes wide with wonder, stumbled upon an intriguing, old leather-bound book, partially buried beneath the roots of a gnarled and twisted tree. Strange symbols shimmered on its cover, catching the dappled sunlight in a mesmerizing dance of light and shadows. Our curiosity inflamed, we huddled closely as I carefully opened the book, revealing a collection of cryptic texts and illustrations that depicted landscapes unprecedented in their ethereal beauty and eeriness, each page a window into a world unlike any we had ever imagined. Unbeknownst to us, this book represented more than a mere relic of bygone eras. It constituted a key, a sophisticated, multidimensional tool capable of bridging disparate realms. As we delved into its enigmatic contents, a low, resonating hum vibrated through the air, a sound that seemed to resonate within our very souls, and before our astonished eyes, a shimmering portal materialized against the backdrop of the forest's verdant canopy. It was an enthralling spectacle, both mesmerizing and terrifying, as the swirling vortex beckoned us with an unspoken promise of adventure yet to unfold, drawing us closer with its irresistible allure, a siren call that was impossible to resist. Our initial wonder and awe swiftly morphed into palpable horror as grotesque, nightmarish creatures began to emerge from the swirling depths of the portal. Unlike anything our eyes had ever witnessed, these twisted entities defied the natural order with their unsettling forms, each one more terrifying than the last. The portal quickly revealed its unstable nature, serving as a precarious gateway threatening to unleash chaos upon our tranquil world, a world that had never prepared us for such an encounter with the unknown. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling before our eyes, leaving us to face the unimaginable. In the face of looming danger, I assumed the mantle of guardian, championing the cause of protecting the children by devising strategies and tactics to repel the advancing nightmares. Each encounter demanded unwavering courage and ingenuity, and with every hard-fought victory, our strength and solidarity as a group grew exponentially. We learned to rely on one another, to trust in our collective strength, and to face each new challenge with determination and resolve. Yet, despite our successes, the threat continued to loom larger and more formidable, transforming the once magical forest into a perilous battleground. The forest, once a place of wonder and mystery, was now a theater of conflict, testing the limits of our resolve and pushing us to the brink of our endurance. Amidst the tumultuous struggle, a profound revelation dawned upon me. The book functioned not only as a key but also as a communicator, a conduit through which the souls of other dimensions reached out across time and space to our own. This sobering realization brought clarity to the understanding that our actions carried implications far beyond our limited comprehension. We were not merely participants in an isolated adventure. We were part of a larger narrative that spanned worlds and dimensions, each choice echoing with significance, each decision a ripple in the vast ocean of existence. As the instability of the portal escalated, urgency compelled us into action. The children, brimming with courage and resourcefulness, devised a bold plan to close the gateway. It was to be a perilous endeavor, one that demanded we confront our deepest fears and most profound doubts. Yet, united by our shared resolve to preserve our world, we confronted the challenge head-on like warriors driven by an unwavering determination. Together, we strategized and executed our plan with precision, knowing that the fate of our world hinged on our success, that our actions would determine the course of our future. In a climactic, heart-pounding confrontation, our combined efforts triumphed, sealing the portal and banishing the sinister creatures back to their otherworldly realm. Silence descended upon the forest once more, its whispers now reduced to a gentle, soothing breeze that caressed our weary souls. Victorious, yes, but irrevocably changed by the experiences that had tested our resolve. We had emerged from the ordeal stronger and more united, our bonds forged in the crucible of shared adversity, our spirits tempered by the trials we had faced. In the peaceful aftermath, as we made our way back along the familiar path to the safety and comfort of our beloved town, I was filled with a newfound sense of hope and an unshakable feeling of belonging. The children, with their unyielding spirit and bravery beyond their years, imparted invaluable lessons about the power of unity and resilience. The Whispering Woods, with its secrets and unfathomable mysteries, had become an indelible part of our story, a poignant reminder of the extraordinary adventure we shared and the bonds we forged beneath its ancient canopy. The forest, once a place of mystery, was now a symbol of our triumph and growth, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring power of friendship. And so, as I bring this chapter of my life to a close, I carry forward the lessons learned in those mystical, haunted woods, forever grateful for the courage and camaraderie that illuminated our way through the encroaching darkness. The memories of our journey, the challenges we faced, and the victories we achieved will remain with me always, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring strength of the bonds we formed. The Whispering Woods, with its secrets and mysteries, will forever be a part of who we are, a reminder of the adventure that changed us all. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, the sky was painted a monotonous gray, a color that seemed to mirror the predictability of my day. It was one of those days where nothing seemed likely to disrupt the continuity of mundane events. Yet, fate had other plans for me, a twist I could never have anticipated. My phone buzzed with a message that shattered the tranquility of my routine existence. This message was not from someone I knew. The number was unfamiliar, a strange and unforeseen entry into my digital space. As I opened the message, the atmosphere around me turned cold, as if trying to enforce a stillness in which this message could truly resonate. The words stared back at me, appearing almost alien, begging for interpretation. "Beware the shadow voice," it proclaimed, carrying an air of profound mystery and foreboding. My initial reaction was one of skepticism. I laughed nervously, reasoning it away as an ill-conceived prank. In my conviction, I had neither adversaries nor unresolved conflicts to inspire such targeted words. Surely, no one would aim such disconcerting messages at me without reason, right? Nevertheless, as the sun gave way to the nightly dominion, this unsettling note was only the prologue to a cascade of communications. Each message that followed seemed heavier, imbued with a sense of dread that grew deeper with every new notification. The days that followed were a blur, each one blending into the next as the messages continued their relentless assault on my peace of mind. I found myself trapped in a cycle of anxiety and anticipation, waiting for the next notification to deliver its cryptic message. The shadow voice seemed to know me better than I knew myself, its words cutting through the facade I had carefully constructed over the years. It was as if this mysterious correspondent had access to the deepest recesses of my mind, unearthing fears and insecurities I had long buried. The messages spoke of choices and consequences, of paths not taken and roads yet to be traveled. They hinted at a destiny I could not escape, a fate that was drawing ever closer with each passing day. As night after night unfurled, my once unshakable walls of tranquility started to falter. Despite bodily exhaustion urging me toward slumber, a battle raged within my mind, a battle I could not ignore. I lay in bed, my eyes refusing respite, while my brain churned with questions that refused to dissipate. Who was this spectral figure behind these writings? What did this mysterious voice want from me? The cryptic nature of their messages hinted at choices, consequences, and ominous crossroads ready to plunge me into profound darkness. More disturbingly, they spoke to the shadows of my past, murmurs of secrets I had thought permanently eclipsed from memory, facets of my life buried, hidden even from those closest to me. The perception that this nameless writer could perceive layers of my being, and was pulling ancient fears into the light, was a thought I couldn't dislodge. Each day's passing seemed to invite chaos ever closer, as the structure of my familiar world began to unravel. My work, a fortress of my professional life, felt the tremors most acutely. The once steady flow of focus that defined my career began to waver, with even straightforward tasks becoming insurmountable. It was not long before my boss perceived these cracks in my performance, a stark deviation from my usual competence. My mind, it seemed, had detached, drifting further into uncharted waters. Inevitably, the foundation of my employment crumbled, casting me adrift in uncertainty. Friends, who previously had been my anchors in joy and solace, now seemed distant. Their laughter rang hollow. Conversations once resonant now echoed in dissonance, as though I had stepped into a dimension disconnected from reality, a waking nightmare from which I could not break free. The frequency of these messages increased, each barrage arriving with virulent intensity that dispelled any fantasies of simply ignoring them. The urgency they carried encroached deeply into my consciousness, their insistent warnings of an inevitable decision, a path that seemed to be drawing me inescapably forward. Trapped in this tide, I found my own life slipping beyond control, each message twisting the familiar into something strange and distant. Efforts to dismiss these uncanny correspondents as mere figments, trickster shadows crafted to deceive, proved futile. They burrowed insistently into my psyche, intertwining themselves with my thoughts and undermining any attempts I made to restore peace. Then came that unforgettable evening, ensconced within the cozy elegance of a neighborhood cafe. The ambience that usually provided comfort felt strangely cold against the rising storm within me. Again, the phone's alert pierced the calm, the notification springing to life with dreaded familiarity. The latest message bore words that resonated with chilling clarity. The time has come. My chest tightened under the weight of anxiety pressing down hard, eyes instinctively scanning the room for any telltale signs of presence. Yet all I saw were the ordinary figures of fellow patrons, the comforting clink of conversation and cups contrasting sharply against the internal chaos. In that moment of buzzing serenity, a realization planted itself firmly in my consciousness. The time had arrived for confrontation. I could no longer defer addressing these provocations. Whether the shadow voice hailed from an external reality or was conjured from my own fears, engagement was now imperative. Answers seemed unlikely to be found in the world beyond. They had to be sought within, beneath layers of introspection and residual shadows. Ceaseless messages opened doors to my forgotten past, forcing me to acknowledge decisions that had woven the fabric of my life's current tapestry. In them, I saw a fragmented portrayal of myself, the public debonair facade, and the private shadow I urgently strived to come to terms with, yet feared to face. There I sat, enveloped in the refuge of the cafe's quiet, certainty wrapped around me like a shroud. The shadow voice had never been an external antagonist throwing out threats from the void. It was, and had always been, the concentrated embodiment of my deepest fears and unresolved regrets, a shadow woven into the fabric of my consciousness for far too long. I reached an undeniable understanding. Attempting to escape from fate was never within my power. Instead, making the choice of how to confront it was mine alone. I could capitulate, let the shadow engulf me, become another whisper in its eternal darkness, or I could remain steadfast, reclaiming the narrative of my life and forging fresh paths unbound from past darkness. Ultimately, the power to decide rested within me. As I prepared to leave the comforting confines of the cafe, an unanticipated peace fell over me, like a gentle embrace steadying my resolve. Just as mysteriously as they began, the messages ceased, their haunting purposes now served. The road ahead assuredly still held challenges and uncertainties, yet I found within myself a preparedness, an emboldened readiness to face whatever specters lay in ambush from the shadows. The convoluted fellowship with the shadow voice had excavated the depths of my inner being, furnishing me with strength to tackle entrenched fears and uncover the truth of my identity. It had transitioned from an escapade to a confrontation. As I stepped into the night, it was no longer about evasion, but an embrace of a clearer essence of my being, shaping glimpses of someone I was always destined to become. The darkness that once loomed as forbidding and impenetrable was transmuted. It had evolved from being an entity solely to be feared into a significant passage of understanding and self-acceptance, profound personal growth. Found within this newfound reconciliation was a light, a tender beacon of hope cultivated through understanding, guiding me into an ever-expanding horizon of sustained shadows. The days that followed were a blur, each one blending into the next as the messages continued their relentless assault on my peace of mind. I found myself trapped in a cycle of anxiety and anticipation, waiting for the next notification to deliver its cryptic message. The shadow voice seemed to know me better than I knew myself, its words cutting through the facade I had carefully constructed over the years. It was as if this mysterious correspondent had access to the deepest recesses of my mind, unearthing fears and insecurities I had long buried. The messages spoke of choices and consequences, of paths not taken and roads yet to be traveled. They hinted at a destiny I could not escape, a fate that was drawing ever closer with each passing day. As night after night unfurled, my once unshakable walls of tranquility started to falter. Despite bodily exhaustion urging me toward slumber, a battle raged within my mind, a battle I could not ignore. I lay in bed, my eyes refusing respite, while my brain churned with questions that refused to dissipate. Who was this spectral figure behind these writings? What did this mysterious voice want from me? The cryptic nature of their messages hinted at choices, consequences, and ominous crossroads ready to plunge me into profound darkness. More disturbingly, they spoke to the shadows of my past, murmurs of secrets I had thought permanently eclipsed from memory, facets of my life buried, hidden even from those closest to me. The perception that this nameless writer could perceive layers of my being, and was pulling ancient fears into the light, was a thought I couldn't dislodge. Each day's passing seemed to invite chaos ever closer, as the structure of my familiar world began to unravel. My work, a fortress of my professional life, felt the tremors most acutely. The once steady flow of focus that defined my career began to waver, with even straightforward tasks becoming insurmountable. It was not long before my boss perceived these cracks in my performance, a stark deviation from my usual competence. My mind, it seemed, had detached, drifting further into uncharted waters. Inevitably, the foundation of my employment crumbled, casting me adrift in uncertainty. Friends, who previously had been my anchors in joy and solace, now seemed distant. Their laughter rang hollow. Conversations once resonant now echoed in dissonance, as though I had stepped into a dimension disconnected from reality, a waking nightmare from which I could not break free. The frequency of these messages increased, each barrage arriving with virulent intensity that dispelled any fantasies of simply ignoring them. The urgency they carried encroached deeply into my consciousness, their insistent warnings of an inevitable decision, a path that seemed to be drawing me inescapably forward. Trapped in this tide, I found my own life slipping beyond control, each message twisting the familiar into something strange and distant. Efforts to dismiss these uncanny correspondents as mere figments, trickster shadows crafted to deceive, proved futile. They burrowed insistently into my psyche, intertwining themselves with my thoughts and undermining any attempts I made to restore peace. Then came that unforgettable evening, ensconced within the cozy elegance of a neighborhood cafe. The ambience that usually provided comfort felt strangely cold against the rising storm within me. Again, the phone's alert pierced the calm, the notification springing to life with dreaded familiarity. The latest message bore words that resonated with chilling clarity. The time has come. My chest tightened under the weight of anxiety pressing down hard, eyes instinctively scanning the room for any telltale signs of presence. Yet all I saw were the ordinary figures of fellow patrons, the comforting clink of conversation and cups contrasting sharply against the internal chaos. In that moment of buzzing serenity, a realization planted itself firmly in my consciousness. The time had arrived for confrontation. I could no longer defer addressing these provocations. Whether the shadow voice hailed from an external reality or was conjured from my own fears, engagement was now imperative. Answers seemed unlikely to be found in the world beyond. They had to be sought within, beneath layers of introspection and residual shadows. Ceaseless messages opened doors to my forgotten past, forcing me to acknowledge decisions that had woven the fabric of my life's current tapestry. In them, I saw a fragmented portrayal of myself, the public debonair facade and the private shadow I urgently strived to come to terms with, yet feared to face. There I sat, enveloped in the refuge of the cafe's quiet, certainty wrapped around me like a shroud. The shadow voice had never been an external antagonist throwing out threats from the void. It was, and had always been, the concentrated embodiment of my deepest fears and unresolved regrets, a shadow woven into the fabric of my consciousness for far too long. I reached an undeniable understanding. Attempting to escape from fate was never within my power. Instead, making the choice of how to confront it was mine alone. I could capitulate, let the shadow engulf me, become another whisper in its eternal darkness, or I could remain steadfast, reclaiming the narrative of my life and forging fresh paths unbound from past darkness. Ultimately, the power to decide rested within me. As I prepared to leave the comforting confines of the cafe, an unanticipated peace fell over me, like a gentle embrace steadying my resolve. Just as mysteriously as they began, the messages ceased, their haunting purposes now served. The road ahead assuredly still held challenges and uncertainties, yet I found within myself a preparedness, an emboldened readiness to face whatever specters lay in ambush from the shadows. The convoluted fellowship with the shadow voice had excavated the depths of my inner being, furnishing me with strength to tackle entrenched fears and uncover the truth of my identity. It had transitioned from an escapade to a confrontation. As I stepped into the night, it was no longer about evasion but an embrace of a clearer essence of my being, shaping glimpses of someone I was always destined to become. The darkness that once loomed as forbidding and impenetrable was transmuted. It had evolved from being an entity solely to be feared into a significant passage of understanding and self-acceptance, profound personal growth. Found within this newfound reconciliation was a light, a tender beacon of hope cultivated through understanding, guiding me into an ever-expanding horizon of sustained shadows. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. As the radiant sun began its languid descent toward the horizon, the expansive sky transformed into a breathtaking canvas painted with strokes of deep crimson and vibrant gold. The colors blended seamlessly, creating a serene yet ominous atmosphere that wrapped itself around me like a cloak as I stood at the enigmatic brink of the Whispering Woods. This forest, shrouded in mystery and possessing an uncanny allure, had captivated imaginations for generations. An endless stream of tales circulated within our community's lore, each recounting eerie warnings meticulously preserved through the passage of time. These narratives spoke of supernatural whispers that drifted through the dense canopy like ghostly breezes and of elusive shadows that prowled and observed from the forest's impenetrable depths. Every story, woven into the rich tapestry of our heritage, was spoken in whispered tones, as though to avoid summoning the very specters said to inhabit the woodlands. The Whispering Woods had always been a source of fascination and trepidation, a place where reality seemed to blur with the supernatural. The stories passed down through generations were not just tales, they were warnings, cautionary accounts of those who had dared to venture too far into its depths and never returned. The forest was alive with secrets, its very essence intertwined with the unknown. It was a place where the line between the seen and the unseen was thin, where the whispers of the past mingled with the present, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and intrigue. On that fateful and unforgettable evening, my insatiable curiosity surfaced as an unstoppable force, transcending any trepidation that lingered within my heart. Although I urged myself to remain prudent, a stronger yearning compelled me to explore. Armed only with a flashlight, whose beam flickered like a timid beacon in the encroaching darkness, I set foot beyond the comfort of the tree-line. Confidence, like an ill-fitting garment, hung loosely on my frame, but I pressed onwards into the expansive unknown. The path I followed was narrow and serpentine, winding deeper into the forest's enigmatic core, almost as if it sought to shield itself from any intrusive presence. With each hesitant step, the enveloping darkness grew denser, an imposing gloom that seemed to consume what sparse light my flashlight offered. The sound of crisp leaves crunching underfoot echoed through the stillness, amplifying my presence and creating the unsettling impression that the forest itself was attentively listening. Despite the warm season's embrace, a peculiar chill permeated the air, adhering to my skin like an invisible cloak in defiance of the night's warmth. It was as though the forest exhaled a breath of foreboding, its unseen tendrils clinging to me with an eerie familiarity. With every step deeper into the woods, the trees appeared to close in around me, cocooning me within their shadowy whispers. I strained to discern their murmurs, initially dismissing them as nothing more than the wind's gentle caress through the leaves. However, as I focused more intently, the whispers became clearer, a haunting symphony of nearly coherent sounds, tantalizingly close to understanding. It felt as if the very essence of the forest engaged in secretive dialogues, conversations held just beyond the edge of my comprehension. The deeper I ventured, the more palpable the forest's presence became. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the very trees were holding their breath, waiting for something to unfold. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, flickering in and out of existence like specters teasing the edges of reality. The forest seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its whispers growing louder, more insistent, as if urging me to uncover the secrets hidden within its depths. Initially, my courage stood firm, a steady anchor amidst uncertainty, but it began to waver when the night's silence was suddenly rent by the sound of a child's laughter, a sound both foreign and otherworldly. It was an eerie infusion of the inviting and the terrifying, its presence keenly out of place. My thoughts yanked me back to well-documented accounts, tales of innocent children who had ventured into the forest's embrace, only to vanish without a trace, consumed by the forest's unsolved mysteries. The echo of each story urged me to retreat, yet an inexplicable force drew me forward, compelling me to unearth whatever truths lay buried in the shadowed recesses of the woods. The laughter swelled, drawing closer, accompanied now by the gentle padding of footsteps encircling me, invisible yet unmistakably felt. My flashlight faltered, casting erratic and jittery shadows that seemed to mock me with sinister delight, their dark forms sneering as I battled to maintain composure. Panic surged within me, constricting my chest as a vice might hold its quarry. Yet determination overrode my fear, a stubborn resolve gripped me, an adamant refusal to turn back without unveiling the truths hidden within these legendary tales that had fueled the fires of local folklore for centuries. The forest was alive with the echoes of the past, its whispers weaving a tapestry of fear and fascination. Each step I took seemed to reverberate through the woods, as if the very ground beneath me was absorbing my presence, adding my story to the countless others that had unfolded within its boundaries. The air was charged with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder that the forest was a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexisted in a delicate balance. Without warning, the path ceased beneath my feet, vanishing as though swallowed by the earth. I found myself standing in a small, ethereal clearing bathed in the moon's silvery glow. This clearing, an unexpected oasis of calm amidst the forest's tumult, was bordered by ancient stones laid out with deliberate precision and etched with symbols beyond my comprehension. Their presence commanded both respect and awe, as if they had served as vigilant custodians to the unfolding horrors long ago cloaked in this silent sanctuary. It was within this hallowed glade that I confronted it, a ghostly apparition materializing at the clearing's edge, emerging from the shadows. This figure towered above me, its form marked by imposing height and unsettling gauntness. Limbs appeared twisted beyond nature's intended bounds, its eyes glowing with an unearthly, internal flame. Primal terror rooted me in place, seizing control as I watched it move with a chilling grace, silent and swift, closing in with the certainty of a predator claiming its prey. Desperation ignited a fierce instinct within me, a refusal to yield to the encroaching darkness. Spinning on my heel, I fled in blind panic, diving into the forest's embrace with a reckless abandon that propelled me forward. Branches clawed and raked at my skin, leaving behind a lattice of stinging marks, but I pressed on, driven by an unyielding will to survive. The creature pursued with relentless intent, its presence hauntingly inescapable, its breath chillingly close upon my neck, punctuated by a low, menacing growl that reverberated through the woods. My heart thundered within my chest. I felt its icy fingers graze my shoulder, a dreadful warning of the darkness that awaited should I falter, even momentarily. On that interminable night, adrenaline emerged as my solitary ally, fueling my desperate flight through the oppressive maw of the forest until, at last, I burst free onto the soft, forgiving grass at the edge of the tree line where the village awaited. Civilization, with all its familiar comforts and reassurances, felt transformed in my absence into something unsettlingly alien and fragile, a delicate illusion threatened by the weight of memories from what lurked beyond. In the days that followed, I found myself ensnared within a cycle of relentless reflection, my mind compulsively replaying the harrowing events of that night, each moment dissected and relived in granular detail. My efforts to recount the story were met with disbelief and skepticism, earning only dubious and worried glances from those who listened. Yet despite the doubts cast upon my tale, I understood the truth. The forest harbored secrets that transcended our tangible reality, a realm where nightmares coalesced in the twilight's hazy embrace. Despite the haunting terror that had indelibly marked my soul, a fragment of my spirit remained inexplicably entwined with that forest, bound by an unyielding desire to comprehend the unknowable. The woods had etched themselves into the very fabric of my being, their whispers now woven inseparably into my internal landscape, beckoning me with their insistent, haunting call. Perhaps one day soon, I would summon the courage required to heed their summons and return. Until that day arrived, my story would serve both as a caution and an invitation, an enduring testament to those possessing the resolve to venture into the veiled depths of shadow and silence, daring to confront the heart of darkness itself. I never anticipated that my routine history lecture would take a turn towards the macabre, plunging me into a realm of terror that I had never before experienced. As a junior studying history at Maplewood University, I had always been fascinated by the various epochs that shaped our world, from the rise and fall of empires to the intricate tapestry of human events that defined our existence. But that fateful Wednesday afternoon, I found myself enmeshed in something far darker than any text could convey, an experience that would haunt my thoughts long after the clock struck 5 and the sun dipped below the horizon. The old lecture hall, with its high ceilings and worn wooden desks, exuded an air of antiquity that was both charming and unsettling. Dust motes danced in the light that filtered through the stained glass, creating an eerie atmosphere that felt almost alive. As I took my usual seat in the back row, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The students around me were unusually quiet, their faces blank canvases devoid of expression, as if they were mere shells of their former selves. A shiver ran down my spine, but I dismissed it as mere nerves, attributing it to the heavy subject matter we were about to delve into. Our lecturer, Dr. Samuel Graves, entered the room wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to absorb the light around him. He looked strikingly out of place, his attire contrasting sharply with the usual casualness of academia, where jeans and hoodies were the norm. There was an unsettling air about him. His eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to hold secrets that were meant to be buried deep within the annals of history. As he approached the podium, a wave of silence washed over us, each of us immobilized by an unseen force that seemed to emanate from him. It was as if the very atmosphere had thickened, wrapping around us like a shroud. Today, we will delve into the darker aspects of human history, he began, his voice smooth yet chilling, sending a ripple of unease through the room. The Second World War was not just a conflict of nations. It unleashed horrors that mankind had never known, horrors that continue to echo through time. He spoke of battles and bravery, but as he continued, his tone shifted, darkening with each word. The tales he spun morphed into eerie accounts of the Hell Brigade, horrific soldiers who reportedly poured into towns and villages, leaving nothing but desolation in their wake, their presence a harbinger of doom. My heart raced as I listened intently, captivated yet terrified. The description of soldiers with eyes like voids and voices like thunder echoed in my mind, resonating with a terror I couldn't articulate. My classmates seemed enraptured, nodding in grim acknowledgement, their faces illuminated by the dim light that flickered overhead. It was as if we were all caught in some hypnotic trance, driven to confront evils that should have remained buried in the past, evils that were clawing their way back into our reality. As the lecture progressed, the air grew dense, and I felt an overwhelming weight pressing on my chest, as if the very room were conspiring against me. Dr. Graves detailed the atrocities committed during the war with a glee that sent chills through me, a morbid fascination that seemed to thrill him. He spoke of people thrown into pits, of screams swallowed by the void, and dread gripped my gut like a vice. I shifted in my seat, longing to escape the suffocating atmosphere, yet I was paralyzed by an unseen force that held me captive. I felt as if I were being drawn deeper into a nightmare from which I could not wake, the boundaries of reality blurring with each horrific detail he unveiled. Then came the moment that shattered my composure, ripping me from my stupor. Dr. Graves' voice dropped to a whisper, his words laced with sinister intent that sent shivers cascading down my spine. What if I told you that the Hell Brigade did not end with the war? What if they are still among us, just waiting for the darkness to claim our souls? His gaze locked with mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw the flicker of something terrible in his eyes, an abyss of despair that threatened to swallow me whole. It was a glimpse into a void where sanity could not dwell, a harrowing invitation to confront the darkest corners of human history. Panic surged through me, a primal instinct urging me to flee. I bolted from my seat, knocking over my desk in the process, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. The cold air rushed over me as I attempted to escape, but the door seemed impossibly far, a distant promise of freedom that I could not reach. The room felt like it was closing in, and the faces of my classmates morphed into grotesque masks of fear and delight, their expressions twisted into a macabre dance of horror. They were enjoying this. They were feeding off this palpable dread, their eyes glinting with a dark satisfaction that made my skin crawl. No matter how fast I ran, I could not escape the lecture hall's grasp, the walls closing in around me like a vice. Dr. Graves continued his monologue, a persistent hum in my ears that drowned out my thoughts. I stumbled into the aisle, desperate to reach the exit, but with every step I took, it felt as though the universe conspired to keep me trapped in this surreal nightmare, a labyrinth of terror that had no end. The shadows lengthened, creeping along the floor as if they had a life of their own, eager to ensnare me in their chilling embrace. Then, just as I neared the door, the lights flickered, plunging the room into a chasm of darkness. For a few harrowing seconds, I felt weightless, as if the ground beneath me had vanished entirely. And then, just as abruptly, light returned, but it was a grotesque parody of illumination, casting long, distorted shadows across the walls that writhed and twisted like living entities. Within those shadows, I could see figures emerging, dressed in tattered uniforms reminiscent of the era we studied, their faces devoid of humanity and filled with haunting sorrow, their eyes hollow and lifeless. These were not mere illusions. They were the vestiges of the past that Dr. Graves had conjured, and they moved with a deliberate malevolence that sent my heart racing. My pulse quickened as the realization hit me. I was trapped in a dimension where history bled into reality, where the horrors of the past had come to reclaim their victims. I had crossed a barrier that separated our world from theirs, and now I was a part of their story, entwined in the very fabric of their suffering. The classroom filled with the hushed whispers of ghostly soldiers recounting their final moments, each tale a thread in the tapestry of despair that enveloped me, wrapping tighter around my throat. The air thickened with a rancid odor, the scent of decay and anguish rising to greet me like an unwelcome specter. I stumbled backward, wanting to scream, but no sound escaped my lips, trapped in a prison of fear. The walls closed in around me, and the temperature dropped to a bone-chilling degree, each breath I took feeling like a struggle against an unseen force. In a moment of sheer terror, I turned to flee once more, but the exit had vanished, replaced by an impenetrable wall of darkness. The walls twisted like serpents, and the floor pulsed beneath me as if it were alive, grasping at my ankles to pull me down into the abyss of despair. I gasped for air, fighting against the internal chaos that threatened to consume me, drowning in a tide of shadow and sorrow, surrounded by the memories of countless souls who had faced the horrors of war and were now trapped in this liminal space. Dr. Graves' voice echoed through the hall, distorted and reverberating against the walls like a death knell. "You wanted to know the past, didn't you? Now you will live it." At that moment, a shrill scream pierced through the air, and I recognized it as my own, a desperate cry for help that seemed to dissolve into the oppressive silence. The darkness clawed at my mind, revealing images of destruction and despair, bodies strewn across battlefields, the last breaths of those who had suffered unspeakable horrors. I was no longer just a student, I was a participant in this grim tableau, and with every heartbeat, reality twisted further away, spiraling into a vortex of despair and hopelessness. I struggled against the tide, feeling my resolve weaken as I succumbed to the overwhelming fear that threatened to engulf me. It felt as if I were being pulled into a maelstrom of despair, the shadows wrapping around me like a shroud, suffocating my spirit. But just when I thought I would be lost forever in this spectral nightmare, a flicker of memory ignited within me, something my grandmother once told me: the past can only hold power over you if you allow it. With that thought anchored in my mind, I summoned every ounce of strength I had left, every fragment of will that remained. Enough! I screamed, pouring all my desperation and defiance into those words. The shadows wavered, recoiling from the resonance of my voice, as if my determination had pierced through their veil of darkness. The ghostly soldiers hesitated, their expressions twisting in confusion, caught off guard by my unexpected resistance. I pressed on, recounting the stories of those who had survived, those who had risen from the ashes of destruction, their resilience a beacon of hope amidst the despair. My voice grew stronger, resonating with hope and defiance, a rallying cry against the encroaching darkness. Slowly, the oppressive weight in the room began to lift, the figures retreating into the shadows, their power waning in the face of my resolve. The walls of the lecture hall shimmered, and I felt a sensation akin to being unshackled from a heavy burden, the chains of fear falling away. I had fought back against the darkness, refusing to be consumed by the horrors of the past that sought to claim me. As suddenly as it had begun, the lecture hall returned to normal, the familiar surroundings bringing me a sense of relief that washed over me like a balm. I found myself standing by the door, breathless and shaken but alive, the remnants of my ordeal still echoing in my mind. The students were gone, and the room was empty save for me and Dr. Graves, who stood at the front of the class, his demeanor oddly calm, as if he had anticipated this outcome all along. He regarded me with a knowing smile that sent chills down my spine, as if he had expected my resistance all along, a predator pleased with the struggle of its prey. "You think you can escape the past so easily? The Hell Brigade will always be lurking, just beneath the surface." His voice dripped with malevolence, and in that moment, I realized my battle wasn't over. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter in a story that had yet to unfold. I stepped into the hallway, shaken but resolute, my heart pounding in my chest. The experience had shifted something within me. I would no longer be just an observer of history, but an active participant, one who would remember, learn, and bear witness to the stories that needed to be told. The past might seek to haunt me, but I would stand firm, prepared to confront any darkness that dared to disturb my reality again. As I walked away from the lecture hall, I glanced back only once, finding the door standing ajar, whispering secrets of an eternal struggle that would never truly end. And though I would carry the weight of that dark experience with me, I knew I would not allow it to define who I was. The Hell Brigade had risen, but so had I, ready to face whatever shadows awaited me in the depths of history. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. It was on that frigid winter day when the world outside transformed into a realm of white and silence, a scene that would haunt me forever. The air was thick with the promise of an impending blizzard, and the wind howled mournfully, as if trying to warn us of the darkness that would soon envelop our lives. I remember that day vividly, perhaps because it was the last time I saw my friends, and the memories are etched into my mind like a chilling nightmare that refuses to fade. As the bus rattled along the familiar route, my heart sank lower with every passing moment. The sky, once a soft gray, now loomed ominously, an oppressive blanket threatening to swallow us whole. The driver, a gruff man with a permanent scowl etched on his face, muttered something about the weather worsening, and I could sense the unease creeping through the rows of seats like a creeping vine. We were children, carefree and oblivious to the chill that seeped into our bones, but even we could feel the shift in the atmosphere, an unsettling tension hanging in the air. I sat beside my best friend, Sarah, who always had a way of making me laugh, even in the darkest moments. We giggled and whispered secrets, our laughter a fragile shield against the growing dread that surrounded us. The bus was filled with the sounds of chatter and playful banter, but there was an undercurrent of anxiety that unsettled me, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. We were just a few minutes away from home when the bus came to an abrupt halt, jolting us from our momentary bliss. The driver peered through the front windshield, squinting against the swirling snow that began to obscure our view. "Sit tight, kids," he said, his voice laced with tension that sent a ripple of fear through us. "Looks like we might be stuck for a while." The words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken dread. The minutes stretched on like hours as the snow piled higher, obscuring our path and trapping us in this metal cocoon. I looked around at the anxious faces of my classmates. They fidgeted in their seats, uncertainty casting a pall over the once lively atmosphere. I could feel fear beginning to creep in, gnawing at my insides like a hungry rat, its claws digging deeper as the realization of our predicament settled in. Then, just as I was about to voice my discomfort, a figure appeared outside the bus. Tall and shrouded in a long, dark coat, he loomed against the white background of the storm, a shadow among shadows. The wind howled like a banshee, and the snow swirled around him, creating an ethereal aura that sent a shiver down my spine. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to see his face, but the storm swallowed his features whole, leaving only an unsettling silhouette. "It's just the snow," I told myself, desperately trying to rationalize the tightening in my chest, but deep down, I knew there was something utterly wrong. The figure moved closer, and the bus fell into an uneasy silence, the laughter that had filled the air moments before snuffed out, extinguished like a candle in a gale. The driver's voice broke the silence, but it did little to calm the rising panic. "Everyone, stay calm," he instructed, but I could hear the tremor in his tone, the fear lurking just beneath the surface. I glanced at Sarah, who looked as terrified as I felt, her wide eyes reflecting my own dread. The figure raised a hand, almost as if beckoning, and a chill ran down my spine, settling deep in my bones. Something compelled me to look away, to focus on anything but the looming figure, but curiosity held me captive. I turned back just in time to see him disappear from view, and then chaos erupted in a way that I could never have anticipated. The bus lurched violently, and the lights flickered ominously, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. A piercing shriek sliced through the air, and I felt panic seize my heart, a cold grip that threatened to crush me. Children began to cry, the sound echoing in the cramped space like a dirge, a mournful melody that filled me with dread. I grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, and she squeezed back, her grip a lifeline in the tempest of fear that threatened to drown us. Moments melted into each other as we huddled together, the shadows in the bus growing darker, more oppressive. I tried to comfort my friends, to tell them everything would be okay, but uncertainty gnawed at me, consuming my thoughts. The next thing I remember was a blinding flash of light, and then darkness enveloped me, swallowing my consciousness whole. When I regained consciousness, the world was eerily still, as if time itself had frozen. The soft crunch of the snow outside was the only sound that filled my ears, a haunting reminder of the chaos that had just unfolded. I blinked my eyes open, disoriented and confused, struggling to piece together what had happened. I was still in the bus, but the others were gone. My heart raced as I called out their names, my voice echoing in the hollow shell of the vehicle, a desperate plea for connection in the void. "Sarah! Kevin! Where are you?" But the only response was the whisper of the wind outside, a cruel reminder of my isolation. I stumbled to my feet, the chill of the bus seeping into my bones, a cold that settled deep within me. I looked out the window, my heart pounding in my chest, and that's when I saw it, an empty expanse of snow, stretching endlessly, a desolate wasteland that mocked my despair. How long had I been here? It felt like days, but I knew that couldn't be right. The bus was covered in snow, as if we'd been abandoned in this desolate landscape, left to the mercy of the storm. Panic began to claw at me as I fought to steady my racing thoughts. "Get a grip, Meredith," I whispered to myself,
but the sound of my own voice did little to comfort me in the face of such overwhelming fear. I managed to open the door, flinging it wide against the bitter wind that rushed in like a wild beast. Snow swirled inside, and I stepped out into the cold embrace of the storm, the biting air stinging my skin. With no other choice, I began to trudge through the thick snow, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if the very ground was trying to pull me back. The world was shrouded in a thick veil of white, and I could barely see beyond a few feet, the landscape distorted and unreal. "Help!" I called out, my voice swallowed by the howling winds, a plea lost in the chaos. But there was no answer, only the oppressive silence of the snow-covered world, a void that echoed my despair. I felt the weight of despair pressing down on me, but I forced myself to keep moving, driven by the hope that I would find my friends. I couldn't give up. I had to find them. Time became a blur as I wandered through the snowy abyss, my mind racing with thoughts of what could have happened. My feet grew heavy, and my breath came in ragged gasps, the cold air burning my lungs. Despite the freezing temperatures, a bead of sweat trickled down my back as fear consumed me, a relentless tide that threatened to drown me. I stumbled upon what looked like a clearing, and my heart leaped, a flicker of hope igniting within me. Perhaps someone was there. But as I approached, the sense of dread deepened, coiling around my heart like a serpent. The clearing was empty, save for the remnants of what appeared to be a child's scarf, vibrant red against the bland white of the snow. It lay half-buried, a haunting reminder of the innocence lost. I reached for it, my heart aching at the sight, a painful reminder of my friend's absence. Where were my friends? My mind raced back to the figure in the snow. Had he taken them? I turned in a circle, feeling trapped in this nightmare, a sense of panic rising within me. Just then, a whisper cut through the silence, a soft, ghostly call that sent shivers racing down my spine, freezing me in place. "Help us!" The voice was faint but unmistakable, filled with desperation that echoed in my heart. It was then that I knew my friends were still here, somewhere in this desolate landscape, and I had to find them. Driven by determination, I pressed forward, the wind howling around me like a malevolent spirit, urging me to turn back. The further I walked, the more disoriented I became, the world around me twisting into a surreal nightmare. Shadows flickered at the corners of my vision, and I could swear I saw figures moving just beyond the veil of snow, taunting me with their presence. I called out again and again, my voice growing hoarse, but my cries were drowned in the storm's fury, swallowed by the relentless winds. Hours passed, or perhaps it was merely minutes. Time was an illusion here, a cruel trick played by the endless white expanse that surrounded me. Finally, I collapsed to my knees, exhaustion overwhelming me, the weight of despair pressing down like a leaden shroud. As I caught my breath, the whisper returned, clearer this time, like a beacon in the darkness. In the woods, the words were a mere breath against my ear, chilling me to the bone, sending icy fingers creeping down my spine. I looked around, questioning my sanity, but deep down, I knew it wasn't my imagination. It was a call I could not ignore. Finding strength I didn't know I had, I pushed myself to my feet once more and stumbled toward the trees that loomed in the distance, their dark silhouettes a stark contrast against the white backdrop. The branches hung low, heavy with snow, and I felt an unnatural pull toward the dark embrace of the woods, a beckoning that promised answers. I stepped beyond the tree line, and the world shifted around me. The air grew even colder, almost biting, and shadows danced between the trunks, alive and watching. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if beckoning me deeper into the heart of the forest. "Come closer." Following the voice, I tread carefully through the forest, each step echoing in the vast silence, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, I stumbled upon an old cabin, half hidden by the trees, its presence both inviting and foreboding. Its wooden walls were worn and weathered, and the door hung ajar, creaking in the wind like a ghostly whisper. Hello? I called out, my voice trembling, fear mingling with hope. There was no reply, only the whispering wind that seemed to mock my desperation. I hesitated, uncertainty clawing at my mind, but the thought of my friend spurred me on, pushing me to take the next step into the unknown. As I crossed the threshold, the air inside was damp and stale, a musty scent that clung to my senses. The darkness clung to me like a second skin, and I squinted to make out shapes lining the walls. Old furniture lay scattered, dust swirling in the dim light, remnants of a life long forgotten. But it was what I heard that made my heart stop, soft cries, muffled and desperate, echoing through the stillness. "Help us, please!" Without a second thought, I rushed toward the source of the sound, my heart hammering in my chest like a drum of impending doom. I found a trapdoor in the corner, partially obscured by fallen debris, and the cries intensified as I pulled it open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into the abyss, a gaping maw that beckoned me to enter. It was a risk, but I had no choice. I had to save them. I clambered down, each step echoing in the silence, and paused at the bottom, my breath hitching in my throat. The cries were louder now, filled with anguish and fear, a symphony of despair that resonated deep within me. "Anyone?" I shouted, but my voice bounced off the walls, swallowed by the darkness. Then I saw them, my friends, huddled together in a dimly lit cellar, their faces pale and wide-eyed with terror. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived as I noticed the bindings that restrained them, their wrists raw and bleeding. "Meredith!" Sarah cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "We thought we'd never see you again." I rushed to them, fumbling with the ropes, my heart racing as I worked to free them. "I'll get you out. Just hold on." As I worked frantically, I glanced over my shoulder, feeling a prickling sensation crawling up my spine, a sense of dread that something was terribly wrong. And then I saw him, the figure from the storm, standing at the top of the stairs, watching us with an unsettling grin that sent chills coursing through my veins. My heart dropped into my stomach, fear coursing through my veins like ice water. "Let them go," I shouted, my voice catching in my throat, but it felt futile against the darkness that surrounded us. He merely tilted his head, as if amused by my defiance. "They are part of the game now, just like you," he said, his voice dripping with malice. In that instant, I understood it was a trap. A sick game played out in the snow, and we were its pawns, caught in a web of terror spun by a twisted mind. I managed to free my friends, and we scrambled to our feet, adrenaline surging through us. The figure laughed softly, a chilling sound that echoed in the small space, a reminder of our impending doom. "Run if you can," he taunted, his voice a haunting melody that sent a shiver down my spine, but something snapped within me, igniting a fire of defiance. Fueled by rage and desperation, I charged up the stairs, my friends close behind me, the taste of freedom tantalizingly close. The door banged shut behind us, locked tight against the encroaching darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. But we didn't stop. The storm still raged outside, but we pushed through it, driven by the primal urge to survive, to escape this nightmare. I could hear the figure's laughter trailing behind us, a ghostly echo that haunted my every step, urging us to turn back. We stumbled through the snow, our breath visible in the freezing air, the cold biting at our skin. As we reached the edge of the woods, I turned back one last time, a sense of finality washing over me. The cabin was empty, swallowed by the storm, and the whispers faded into the night, leaving only silence in their wake. We made it, together, we survived, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the horrors we had witnessed. But in the days that followed, as I sat in my room, a chilling thought loomed over me, a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. It had been a blizzard, but now it felt like a curse, an omen of something far more sinister. I could still hear the whispers, faint but persistent, calling out to me from the shadows of the storm, a siren song that beckoned me back to the darkness. And deep down, I knew that although we had escaped the cabin, the darkness would always linger, waiting for the next blizzard, waiting for the next game to begin, a game that would ensnare others in its icy grip, just as it had ensnared us. The shadows would always be there, lurking, watching, and whispering, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. On the outskirts of the city, shrouded in an aura of neglect and despair, stands a forgotten prison, a supermax facility ominously known as the Abyss. Its cold, uninviting exterior is marked by the scars of time, the crumbling walls telling tales of sorrow and fear, sending chills down your spine as you approach. As a psychological consultant tasked with assessing some of the facility's most special and dangerous inmates, I found myself drawn into a world far removed from the ordinary. These weren't your average criminals. They were supernatural beings of unimaginable power, demons with malicious intent, vampires lurking in the shadows, and even ancient elves whose very existence defied the laws of nature. Each time I stepped into that dark, foreboding place, an unsettling feeling washed over me, as if unseen eyes were watching my every move from the depths of the shadows. One of my main tasks during my time there was to interview old Vikram, a legendary and powerful ancient elf whose very name sent shivers through the hearts of those who dared speak it. He had been trapped within these walls for centuries, forced to witness countless horrors and the despair of countless souls. The first time I met him, I was taken aback by the intensity of his age-old gaze and the bone-chilling aura he exuded. He radiated an indescribable energy that felt both ancient and dangerous, and I could feel his magic swirling around me, almost like a living entity. As I prepared to record his experiences, Vikram flashed a strange, knowing smile, as if he were fully aware that I was caught in a battle with the darkness that surrounded us both. As our interviews progressed, I began to notice that the prison's security measures weren't as solid as they seemed on the surface. The alarm system frequently malfunctioned at the most inopportune moments, the surveillance cameras occasionally went dark without explanation, and endless secrets seemed to lurk just out of sight in the shadows. Over the course of several nights, inmates began to vanish without a trace, one after another, and rumors quickly spread that a demon had somehow escaped its cell, heightening my unease and making the atmosphere even more charged with dread. One fateful night, just as I was about to leave the prison after a long day, a piercing scream shattered the silence that enveloped the facility. It was the night guard's voice, echoing through the halls, followed closely by the sound of heavy footsteps and low, ominous murmurs. My heart racing wildly, I stepped out of my office, trying to locate the source of the noise that had disrupted the eerie stillness. The corridor was empty, devoid of life, the only sound being the flickering lights on the walls, which seemed to be signaling an impending event, a warning of something terrible about to unfold. I cautiously approached a unit that had once housed vampires, and my breath caught in my throat as I saw the metal door pried open, a deep trail of blood staining the floor beneath it. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized things had spiraled out of control in a way I could never have anticipated. Just as I turned to leave, a shadow darted past me, sending chills racing down my spine. I whipped around, but nothing was there, just the eerie silence of the corridor, amplifying my sense of dread and foreboding. Days later, chaos erupted in the prison once again. Several inmates were found dead, their faces twisted in agony, as if they had endured endless suffering before their demise. A few guards went missing under mysterious circumstances, and the news spread like wildfire, saturating the prison with an overwhelming sense of fear and paranoia. Panic set in among the staff, who began to point fingers at each other, desperate to find someone to blame, and rumors flew like wildfire, plunging the entire facility into a state of terror and confusion. I started to suspect that old Vikram's purpose was more than just sharing his story with me. His gaze often lingered in the dark corners of the prison, hinting at something deeper and more sinister than I could comprehend. I decided to continue my interviews, driven by a need to uncover the secrets hidden within these walls. However, Vikram issued a chilling warning that sent shivers down my spine. Beware the truth you seek, It is dark and will consume you whole." His words echoed in my mind, adding to the growing sense of dread that enveloped me. Just when I was about to give up hope, another riot broke out in the prison. The inmates seemed to be incited by something malevolent, the whispers of demons echoing in their ears, plunging the entire facility into chaos and confusion. I fled into Vikram's solitary chamber, seeking refuge from the turmoil outside, but as soon as I stepped inside, a powerful energy enveloped me, sealing me in against my will. Vikram's gaze was complex and profound as he looked at me, filled with an understanding that sent chills down my spine. "You have been chosen," he whispered, his voice low and resonant. "You must pay the price for the sins of this prison. The truth lies in the darkness, but can you find it?" His voice rumbled like thunder, stirring my very soul and leaving me feeling both terrified and compelled. Gradually, I began to realize that the dark forces within this prison were not just demons and vampires. There were ancient curses and evils hidden here, lurking in the shadows, and Vikram seemed to be intricately linked to everything that transpired within these walls. I understood that to survive, I had to confront these heavy truths that weighed down upon me like a suffocating shroud. As more and more truths surfaced, I found myself unable to escape the dark reality that surrounded me. Every corner of the prison hid unspeakable secrets, and these secrets drew me into a vast conspiracy that I could not fully comprehend. My anxiety, fear, and despair intertwined, ultimately forcing me to plunge into the abyss of the prison, facing supernatural beings and the demons that lay within myself. I finally discovered the fate of the missing guards. Their bodies were hidden in a secret passage within the prison, an existence long forgotten, brought about by Vikram's dark power. Their deaths seemed to be part of a dark ritual, and my arrival here was just an unfortunate footnote in a much larger, sinister narrative. In the end, I returned to old Vikram, demanding he reveal the truth behind it all. However, he simply gave me a cold smile that sent chills down my spine and told me that the prison's fate had already been sealed, and I could not escape it, no matter how hard I tried. A strange light flickered in his eyes, and in that moment, I knew this was the crossroads of my destiny, where everything I feared would come to a head. Deep within the prison, I found myself trapped in an endless cycle of horror and despair. No matter how hard I struggled against it, I had to face my fears, confront old Vikram, and the darkness he represented. I realized that the terror didn't just stem from these supernatural beings. It was the despair of my own helplessness, lurking deep within me, feeding off my fears. At the story's end, I wandered the prison corridors, feeling as if everyone around me had been consumed by the darkness that permeated the air. I desperately sought an exit, yet I always returned to that eerie shadow that seemed to mock my every move. Every corner of the prison appeared to taunt me, mocking my ignorance and helplessness. And Vikram's whispers, like flickering flames in the dark, guided me deeper into the abyss, where I was destined to confront the darkest parts of myself and the horrors that lay within. Hope you enjoyed that spine-chilling experience. Now, let's move on to the next creepy tale. Ready to face more thrilling moments together? Let's dive into the next story right away. In this dark, damp city, where the nights are perpetually shrouded in thick layers of fog, I find myself struggling to navigate through the endless darkness that envelopes me. The chilling air hangs heavy, and the streets are dimly lit, casting eerie shadows that seem to whisper secrets of despair. Whenever the moonlight manages to filter through the thick clouds, casting a faint, ghostly glow, I feel the demons within me stirring, awakening from their long slumber. It's as if they've finally found an opportunity to return to my life after years of being buried deep within. My palms grow clammy, my heart races uncontrollably, and fear wraps around me like a massive net, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. I sit alone in the corner of a bar called the Shadow's Tale, a dimly lit refuge where I can temporarily escape the harsh realities of life. This place has become my sanctuary, a haven where I can drown my sorrows in alcohol and forget my troubles, if only for a little while. The bartender, Stacy, has been here for quite some time now. She always greets me with a warm smile, her eyes sparkling with kindness, as if she can see the darkness lurking just beneath the surface of my facade. I've tried many times to engage her in a deep conversation, to share the turmoil brewing inside me, but I'm always interrupted by the relentless whispers of anger that echo in my mind. Today, I order my favorite old-fashioned again, gripping the glass tightly as my thoughts are pulled back to memories I'd rather forget, memories that haunt me like ghosts in the night. As I sit there, my gaze wanders aimlessly around the bar, my heart heavy with unease and anxiety. I can't shake the feeling that something is about to go horribly wrong, that the darkness within me is about to spill out into the world. Then, like a ghost materializing from the shadows, the news hits me. A young woman has been found dead nearby, and the whispers of this tragedy spread swiftly through the bar like wildfire. My heart sinks like a stone, quickly followed by a wave of hatred and jealousy that crashes over me. That face flashes in my memory. She was someone I admired deeply, someone who once inspired me, and now she's become a haunting nightmare in my mind. Her untimely death fills me with an overwhelming rage at my own helplessness, rage at the cruel hand of fate that has snatched her away. Are you okay? Stacy's voice cuts through my dark thoughts, her eyes filled with genuine concern as she looks at me. I force a smile, but the anger simmering inside me only intensifies, boiling just beneath the surface. Her concern feels like a match struck against the darkness, igniting the flames that burn deep within me. I want to share my pain with her, to let her in on the turmoil that rages inside, but I remain silent, trapped by a powerful impulse that churns within me, urging me to act. As the night grows deeper, the bar's lights dim further, mirroring the heaviness of my mood. I see people around me lost in laughter and merriment, their joy starkly contrasting with the turmoil in my heart. It feels as though they are all targets of my jealousy, their happiness a painful reminder of what I lack. That warm feeling of camaraderie inside me spreads uncontrollably, only to be ruthlessly consumed by the flames of anger. The whispers in my ears remind me that time is running out, that I can't remain a passive observer in this dark play. As the alcohol begins to take effect, my thoughts become hazy, and everything around me starts to distort, blurring the lines between reality and the chaos in my mind. Those innocent smiles become increasingly blinding, and the demon within me grows clearer, more defined. It screams at me, urging me to seek revenge, to take action against the injustices of the world. My hands start to shake uncontrollably, and the glass slips from my fingers, crashing to the floor, shards scattering everywhere, causing gasps of shock from those around me. What's happening? Stacy rushes over, confusion flickering in her eyes as she surveys the scene. I feel like I've lost control completely, my anger drowning out any semblance of rational thought. I want to escape this suffocating atmosphere, but my legs feel heavy as lead, as if they're rooted to the ground. The demon's whispers echo in my ears, relentless and deafening, like an unending thunderstorm, tearing at my heart and soul. You shouldn't hold back anymore, they say, their voices a twisted chorus. Take back your power, seek revenge. In that moment, I feel as though I'm standing on the precipice of an abyss, teetering dangerously close to the edge. I sense the boiling rage within me, a fierce desire to shatter the cheerful laughter surrounding me. The people in the bar have transformed into my enemies, and I am undoubtedly a puppet driven by the demon, completely losing myself in the process. With a sudden burst of energy, I rush toward the door, memories of the past flooding back into my mind, the smile of that woman buried deep in my heart. She was a ray of light that once illuminated my life, a beacon of hope in my darkest moments, and now I'm consumed by the suffocating darkness that threatens to engulf me. My hands tremble uncontrollably, and I can only follow the demon's lead toward the bloody scene that's about to unfold, drawn by an irresistible force. The people around me seem blissfully unaware of my presence. My heart is filled with anxiety, but stronger still is the endless impulse that drives me forward. I stare blankly at everyone around me, searching their eyes for that desperate opportunity to unleash the chaos brewing within me. Go on, take it, you'll feel immense joy. The demon's whispers rise again, more insistent now, as if singing a dark requiem for lives taken. Stacy notices my abnormal behavior as I approach the door and tries to intervene, reaching out to grab my hand. You need to calm down. What's going on? Those words, meant to comfort, only served to fuel the fire of my anger. Her voice pierces through the night like a sharp blade, stabbing at my most vulnerable spot, igniting my rage further. I want to flee this suffocating reality, but I feel like I'm falling into an endless abyss, with no way to escape the darkness that surrounds me. As Stacy gets closer, I feel anger and contradiction intertwining within me, as if she's the last flicker of hope before I plunge into the depths of despair. I'm at a loss, the outside world slowly blurring into obscurity, while that impulsive drive grows ever stronger, pulling me deeper into the shadows. Let it all end. The whispers become more urgent, like dark tides sweeping in to claim me. I struggle to break free from their grip, but that force grows stronger, as if there's no way to escape its suffocating embrace. Just then, the bar's lights suddenly blaze to their brightest, illuminating the darkness that has taken root in my heart. In that moment, I can no longer resist the feeling of being driven by the demon. The impulse within me surges, demanding to be unleashed. I have to do something. I murmur, the flames of hatred consuming me whole, devouring my reason without reservation or remorse. I reach out to Stacy, fear reflected in her eyes, and in a moment of blind rage, I push her away without mercy. In a cinematic moment, I see every person in the bar turning to look at me in terror, their once joyful smiles bursting like fragile bubbles, screams erupting like a cacophony of chaos. How do I deal with the darkness in this world? The demon's roar within me can no longer be contained, echoing in the recesses of my mind. In the next moment, time seems to freeze, and everything begins to twist and contort in the shadows of my soul, as if reality itself is unraveling. The demon revels in my heart, feeding off my despair, while I'm pushed deeper into the dark by my increasingly blurry sense of self. The bar transforms into a waking nightmare, no longer my warm haven, but a stage for my burning rage and unquenchable thirst for vengeance. I become the most terrifying devil in my heart, witnessing everything unfold, powerless as I linger on the edge of my own destruction. As fear spreads like wildfire, chaos erupts in the bar. The screams of people echo in my ears, a haunting reminder of my own descent into madness, as if they're the last cries of my escape from the suffocating grip of reality. No one will know that the true darkness has taken root in my heart, impossible to drive away or extinguish. In that endless nightmare, I become numb, feeling no fear, just an empty shell of a soul left behind in the wake of my own destruction. Perhaps the only escape lies in an endless struggle with the demon, a battle that rages on within me. Am I truly unable to find my way back in this desperate abyss, or will I be consumed by the darkness that threatens to swallow me whole? And at this moment, deep within my soul, that eternal whisper still lingers, echoing through the void. This is the beginning, and also the end. Alright, that's the end of today's story. Thank you for joining me on this thrilling journey through the shadows of life and death. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the little bell to get more spine-chilling tales from Whisper of Horror. Remember, every soul has a story, and here, we give them a voice. See you next time. Stay curious, stay cautious, and keep whispering horror.